my phone. And also for anyone in Stanford on Sunday, I'm leading a kind of storytelling and creative writing workshop at the County Sisterhood Gallery where my community art is hanging. It's free. It's Sunday at 5 if you're around. And I'm going to be reading about my grandparents. The story that's really inspired me. You can hear me now, right? This is okay, cool. When I take long walks under the pine trees that line my street, I often think of my grandmother. When the sun would start to set, she'd take me on nature walks as I gathered fallen leaves, twigs, and pebbles in an empty egg carton. She even helped me catch my first silkworm, hanging on to a giant maple leaf. Nature connects me to not only my grandmother, but everything she represents for me. My grandmother and I had amazing memories together. As a child, she'd always yell at me for going barefoot on cold kitchen tiles. She didn't want me to catch a cold, as she'd say in her thick Czech accent. My grandmother made the most mouth-watering meat opening, and every holiday was filled with homemade chicken soup, brisket, and leftovers for weeks. My grandmother was the strongest, most generous woman I've ever known. She was my role model, my hero, a powerhouse of a lady that connected me to my faith, my legacy, and my home. At 18 years old, my grandmother survived the concentration camps. She once told us the story of the day she was liberated from Auschwitz. As planes flew over their heads, a soldier told her, "You're free," and she didn't really know what that meant. My grandmother was a creative soul in and out of hard times. In the camps, she survived on this creative fuel. The Nazis forced her to sew their uniforms because she was a highly skilled seamstress, which, along with her determined spirit, is how she was able to stay alive. She and her surviving family members ended up in the German DP camps before they immigrated to America through Ellis Island in 1947, and eventually made a home in New York City. She met my grandfather, a tailor and immigrant from Poland, on Delancey Street. They married, started a family, and built a successful clothing manufacturing business in Brooklyn that made garments for various department store brands. Supposedly, Lyndon B. Johnson's daughters wore some of the suits and coats they made. War was over, and my grandmother was free. But now there were many who had a strong dislike for immigrants, and my grandparents were met with hateful disbelief. My grandmother had shoes thrown at her in the streets. Nowadays, people talk openly about mental health and psychology, but back then, post-traumatic stress disorder wasn't really a thing. So she always kept whatever she was feeling inside. Despite what she had been through, my grandmother never grew bitter. I could sense a sadness, but she was always loving, grateful, and generous for as long as I knew her. Growing up, I felt this strong connection with my grandmother, although I didn't understand the depth of her struggles as a young child. She was grandma. So she and I would take her walks. She would sew buttons on my coat. She'd bake her delicious puddings and hug me so tightly I couldn't breathe. And although she never liked to discuss the pain of what she went through, I could always see that depth in her eyes. So my grandmother was faced with these life-altering circumstances at 18. And little did I know I would connect with her struggles so deeply. When I was 18, a week before my high school senior prom, I found myself in intense pain. I woke up 6 months later only to learn that my stomach had literally burst to the top of the operating room and exploded, and after both my lungs collapsed and 122 units of blood, I almost died. Here I was, suddenly displaced from my former life as a carefree, audacious, musical theater-loving teen, and now thrust into a world of tubes, wires, bags, beeping machines, and a world of crisis where everything became minute to minute, a fight for physical, emotional, and spiritual survival. My grandmother passed away when I was recovering fresh out of the hospital, and learning this in my new post-coma situation was a shock. I too was now waking up in another world. When my parents told me the news, I didn't know what to think. I and the tormenting flashbacks of sexual abuse shortly before my coma to feel anything. Worse, I was home and without a digestive system, and doctors couldn't tell me when or if I'd ever be able to eat or drink again. So now I couldn't even have a sip of water for years, and I tried not to feel anything at all. Feeling the slightest bit of sadness, loss, or any bit of human emotion might make me feel the deadliest feeling of all, hunger. I couldn't think of my grandmother. I couldn't bear the weight of her gone from my life. But now, with no medical answers in sight, I needed to feel her as a beacon of hope at a time when hope was extremely hard to find. So I decided to take the first step in mourning my grandmother. I decided to feel again in a desperate attempt to keep any last scrap of hope alive. I often searched for her spirit in the many seagulls that flew over our tiny house by the water. We would pray to any seagull we saw, feeling my grandmother's presence in her glorious flight. The seagulls helped me believe in miracles, that things would get better, and that my grandmother was still with me, watching over me in loving protection. It made me feel less afraid of what the uncertain future would bring at a time when it was really hard to keep believing in anything. When my grandmother passed away, I didn't say goodbye, but I didn't lose that connection. The day I decided to really think of her, mourn my losses, and cry over her legacy, that was the very day I was able to incorporate her back in my life. And then her spirit stayed with me, and her love guided my way. Her love guided me all the way back to finding myself. My grandma taught me how to care again. And my grandmother made me realize the true miracle. The miracle was learning that she has been with me all along, watching over me and ensuring that not only did I keep my body alive, but my spirit, my will, and my heart. Now she's the music as I dance, the food that warms my insides, and the guidance into the unknown world of the rest of my life. And every now and then, as I walk outside and look at those same trees my grandmother would always point to, I sometimes see a seagull soaring over my head. It was her strength that I channeled to get me through my own wars. And once I was physically healthy again, but still struggling to get back to normal, I felt that I was able to understand her on an even deeper level. That's when I realized that, like her, the emotional pain of what I went through would take much longer to heal than my physical scars. So to get through that pain, I latched on to my childhood memories of her thick accent, homemade egg noodles, and the fact that she was deathly afraid of water after the long boat ride to America. Now, things started making sense. I started talking to family members to learn as much as I could about her. The more I learned, the more I felt healed. I started a documentary theater project inspired by her story, and the strength she gave me to prosper again after my life-threatening illness. My grandmother has always been my angel, especially in times when I've struggled to have hope. My immigrant heritage now means everything to me, because they mean